Hello guys and welcome to RAMJB's Fighter Combat School. It's been a while since the last lesson and I think it's time for yet another one. This is very closely related to energy fighter and advanced energy management for fighters. And the idea of this video and this particular lessons comes from reading the forums and noticing that people have not a clue on what they are talking about. In what regards to climbing, there's a huge ongoing argument in the forums as for which planes climb at which speed and which is better than historical, worse than historical. And I'm seeing a lot of people doing actual tests of planes without knowing even the basics of climbing. And what does climbing mean? And exactly how should you conduct climbing test, which of course also mean that those guys have no clue on how to use climbing in actual combat. Because believe me when I tell you that energy fighting involves a lot of vertical fighting. Or fighting in the vertical. And fighting in the vertical is impossible if you have not a clue of what you're doing. If you don't know what and why you are doing something, chances are it's not going to work very well, isn't it? So, excuse me. So, yeah. The thing here is that I think it's time to put up something about what do I exactly mean when I say I'm going into a zoom climb. Or assume climb. And yeah, I guess it's time to actually explain it. So first things first, the basics. And out of what's written in this image you see right now, there's something very important I want to tell you. Angle of climbing doesn't mean crap. It's basic stuff. Steeper angles in climbing are good and are better if your speed, your actual plane speed, is the same as in another plane that's keeping a lower angle. But you shouldn't climb tests, do climb tests, or think that one plane climbs better than the other because one is able to climb at a steeper angle. Has nothing to do with that, believe me. Say that, let's go with what's actually written there. Climbing in combat and out of it. Basic guide to the boom and zoom. Zoom. Okay, climbing is an art that doesn't just involve pointing the nose up. Yeah, if you point the nose up, you are going to climb, but exactly how? I mean, in fighting, as in any other part of just taking a fighter around, you want to be effective. And effectiveness means getting your plane to climb the best as it can, and planes don't climb the same at all speeds. Let me give you an instance. A plane with a top speed of 500 km per hour. It's moving at 500 km per hour. If he points the nose up, he's going to slow down. That plane can't climb at 500 km per hour, but can climb at lower speeds. Which is the lower speed it can go where it climbs the best? That's something we are going to see in this particular lesson. Let's go on. Speed management is crucial to get the best of your plane abilities in energy fighting. It's pretty easy to understand that the more effective you are at extracting the highest climb rate and acceleration out of your plane, the most effective you are going to see in energy fighting. Now, this point is very important. Be mindful of your indicated airspeed. True airspeed is useless in most regards to air combat. This is basic, and goes hand to hand with the next point. Change your HUD to show indicated airspeed. Otherwise, you'll probably lose track of what you're doing at which IAS. And by default, the heads-up display, the user interface you see in combat, indicates your SPD, which is actually the true air speed. And planes don't maneuver depending on their true airspeed. They maneuver according to their indicated airspeed, which is the actual speed the plane is feeling. I'm not going to enter what is true airspeed and what is indicated airspeed, because there's another lesson in this same series where I do explain that and how to change the HUD to show indicated airspeed. You are going to see a link up here in the video in annotations. So if you don't see it, put annotations on and click on that one if you haven't seen it yet. Next point. Knowing your plane is key, as is knowing the enemy plane. If you don't know your plane abilities or your enemies, and worse, if you don't know either, you'll probably end up using the wrong tactics in the wrong plane against the wrong enemy. Fighting in the vertical requires a bit of thinking and smart maneuvering and speed management. Otherwise, you'll be easy prey when trying to pull this kind of tactics. This is a little bit tricky because the in-game charts actually are useless. Absolutely useless. Don't trust them at all. So it's a little bit hard to know which plane does climb at the best at a given speed. Basically, it's hard to know which is the best climb speed of every plane in the plane survey now, because it's listed nowhere. Basically, in this same lesson, I'm going to give you some overall guides of which are the best climb speeds for different kind of planes. But even so, each plane has a different climb speed, and probably you are going to have to find it by yourself by trying, because seriously, I can't be bothered to go one then another, then another, then another through all the planes in the plane set, testing for the best climb speed supposed here. I mean, that's something the developers should do, and they will do at some point. But in the meantime, just the rough guidelines I'm going to give you are going to be enough. So yeah, this is the basics. Let's move on to what's the best climb speed. And there you go. Best climb speed. It is the speed at which your plane achieves its best sustained climb rate. What is sustained climb rate? We are going to see it later, don't worry. It's the product of power loading and wing, actually it's lift loading. There's a difference between wing loading and lift loading. Lift loading is depending on a lot of circumstances. Basically, a lower wing loading doesn't necessarily mean a better turning or better climbing plane. But for reasons of being simple, I'm going to refer it to wing loading from here on. Power loading, remember, is the power of your engine divided by your plane's weight. And wing loading is the wing area of your plane divided between the weight of your plane. The higher the power loading, the best. The lower the wing loading, the best. Going on with what you see in the screen. The higher the power loading and the lower the wing loading, the slower the best climb speed will be. This is not bad. I mean, not necessarily bad. This means that the higher power loading you have and the lower wing loading means your best climb speed is at a lower speed. Nothing else, okay? Over the best climb speed, what happens? I mean, if you are not at your best climb speed, what happens? Well, if you are over your best climb speed, your plane tends to accelerate in the horizontal, wasting power in horizontal acceleration that could be used in climbing more. Easy to see. If you are under your best climb speed, the angle of attack tends to increase, and so increasing aerodynamic drag. The power is actually wasted in overcoming that drag instead of being useful in climbing. Under your best climb speed, actually what happens is that your plane is actually starting to flare. And what's flaring? Well, you have seen planes landing. A plane landing is flaring. It's increasing the angle of attack. Flaring in a plane produces more lift, but at a much higher drag. So if you start going to higher angles of attack, you are going to present more of your plane to the wind, and it's going to suffer a higher drag. And your engine will have to waste some of its power to overcome that drag instead of actually climbing the plane. This is actually very useful to understand why heavier planes have a higher climb speed than lighter ones, because that's the case, by the way. Heavier planes have to be at higher speeds to generate enough lift to keep a straight line. and if they go under that best climb speed, they are going to find themselves with a very big angle of attack very soon. Let's go on. For planes with great power loading and wing loadings, for instance the PF-109, at least the early series, the E, the F4, the G2, Spitfires, Zeros even, it is in the 250 to 70 kilometers per hour region. So the best climb speed of a PF-109 or a Spitfire is around 260 kilometers per hour, more or less. For planes with middle of the ground power loading and wing loadings, for instance the F4U, the Typhoon, the P-38, a lot of planes in the plane set, actually most of them, is in between 270 to 290 kilometers per hour. So aiming for 280 is a very safe bet. For planes with very poor power loading or wing loading, for instance the P-47, the P-51, the Focke 590, it is in the 300 to 320 kilometers per hour range. And those are the speeds you want to aim for when you are climbing. When you aim for your best climb speed, and here this goes hand to hand with what I said at the beginning of this lesson. Angles of climbing mean nothing. What matters is your best climb speed. How to do a good climb speed? Well, what you should do is to accelerate your plane until you hit your sweet spot for the plane you are in, your best climb speed, and then increase the angle of your plane until you keep that speed constant. You don't slow down, you don't accelerate over that. And in that angle, and that attitude, and that speed, you are in your best climb attitude, which is the best sustained climb. And we are going to see what exactly is a sustained climb. So, sustained climb. It happens at the best climb speed. Of course, I just told you this, so yeah. It is a product of power loading and wing loading, exactly what happens at best climb speed. What brings your plane up is the power your engine has and the lift your wings create. Basically, when you are in a sustained climb, what's bringing you up is actually the power your engine is producing, which has a component in the vertical and is trying to get your plane up, and the lift your wings are creating, because those are also trying to get you up. So it's a mix of those, both of those. Okay. The sustained climbs are measured in meters per second or feet per minute, depending on the units used. Imperial, well, metric or imperial, depending on which one. The sustained climb rate is a sustained climb rate in a sustained climb varies with altitude. Engine power that's too. The higher you go in the atmosphere, the thinner the atmosphere is. Planes have superchargers to compensate for that and try to keep a steady supply of oxygen to the engines. But even so, I mean, the higher you go, the less power you have. At least it's a rule of thumb. Superchargers change that, and turbochargers change that. But it's easy to see that your power is going to vary with the altitude, and as such, climb rate is not the same at all altitudes. There are some planes that have their best climb speed at sea level. For instance, the German planes, all of them, their best climb speed it's at sea level. There are others that their best climb rate happens at an altitude. For instance, the Spitfire 9, the best climbing altitude happens at, I think it's around 12,000 feet, which translates into something like 3,500 meters, more or less. But a Spitfire at sea level is actually going to climb worse than up there. So you have to understand this. The sustained climbing is the most efficient way to head the highest, the soonest. So when you are at the beginning of the battle, you want to sustain climb your plane at the best climb speed you can your plane has. That way you will increase your efficiency of climbing, and when contact is done with the enemy, you'll be the highest your plane can go in the time frame you have spent up to that point. I have to tell you this is an oversimplification of things. Best climb speeds also change with altitude, but currently in War Thunder they are more or less the same as altitude goes by. And the guidelines I gave you in the previous image, they hold true for most planes. So don't be worried about that. Yes, when you are climbing out of combat, before establishing combat with the enemy, try to hit your best climb speed and keep that up until you make contact. Okay, and that's the way you will improve your climb rate, the best you can in the plane you are. So this is just about theory about climbing out of combat. Now we are going to enter specifics about in combat maneuvers and in combat climbing. A lot of times you have seen me during games doing just going out of an engagement and saying, well, now I'm zooming away, which is totally wrong because I should be saying I'm zooming away, but whatever. The thing is that there is a very distinct and marked and absolute distinction between what is a sustained climb and what is a zoom climb. They are totally different stuff, totally different. And believe it or not, those planes that have poor sustained climb rates usually are excellent at zoom climbing. I'm talking fighters here, of course. And it's usually the case. It's not always the same, okay? Because usually the planes that climb the worst is because they are heavier. And the heavier you are, the better you get at zooming. Or zooming. You're going to see this right now, because I'm going to explain what exactly a zoom climb is. And here it is, a zoom climb. Zoom climbs happen at high speeds. The higher the airspeed, the more into zoom territory you are. Pointing your nose up at high speeds will make you climb due to inertia, not due to engine power. This is very important. If you are very over your best climb speed and you point your nose up, actually your engine is not doing a lot of work. Actually what's bringing your plane up is inertia. And if you have studied this series of energy, fighter combat school, and if you haven't, you should, you'll know that in the first two chapters, which I'm going to link and you're going to see in annotations in this part of the video, as I was saying, if you have seen those videos, you'll know that heavier planes are much better at keeping speeds because of inertia. Because heavier planes have inherently the ability to keep their speed up for much longer times. The higher the weight, the higher the inertia. So in some climbs, what you want is to have a heavy plane that keeps its speed up very easily at high speeds. Let's go on. Very heavy but aerodynamic planes have insane zooms because they have a ton of inertia. Light planes, even while aerodynamic, have very poor zooms due to very low inertia, no matter how great sustained climbers are. For instance, a BF-109 being a great sustained climber is a very poor zoom climber. And this is key to understand. Key. Because if you are in an excellent climbing plane like the BF-109, the I don't know, the LA5, well, the LAs are a totally different stuff. Well, whatever. If you are in a very light plane that climbs very well at its best climb speed, but it is very light, if you are very fast and you bring your nose up, your sustained climb rate is going to matter for nothing. What matters is your zoom ability, and your plane mass and weight, because that's what gives you inertia. So this is very important to understand. Even when you are in an astronomically good climber at slow speeds or sustained speeds, if you are at very high speeds and you are not in a very fast plane, very heavy plane, sorry, you are not going to be very effective at reaching high altitudes. And the guy behind you, if it's in a boom and zoomer, is going to overtake you, even in a climb, because it's a zoom climb, not a sustained climb. Finally, once speed starts coming close to the best climb speed of the given plane, it's no longer a zoom climb, but a sustained climb. So this is very important for the boom and zoomers. When you are coming close to your best sustained climb rate, you are no longer in a zoom. It's time to level up or to start a power dive. Because if you hit that best climb speed, you are totally out of the zoom, and what's acting is your engine power loading and your wing loading, and those usually are poor in boom zoomers. Okay, so these are the basics of boom and zoom climbs. Now, how does this translate into actual combat? Let's do a comparison between a light plane and a heavy plane. So, how to effectively use this knowledge in combat? We'll do a case analysis of a fight with a P-47D versus a PF-109F4. Okay, taking one by one, the P-47D is a plane that has a very poor sustained climb rate, very high sustained climb speed, and is not very good at slow turning. It's a pure boom and zoomer. Okay, the PF-109F4, on the other hand, is an excellent climber. It's a very good turner, but is so at slow speeds, because the best climb speed for a PF-109F4 is around 260 km per hour, while the best climb speed for a P-47D is around 310 km per hour, more or less. You can see the difference there. The PF-109F4 climbs very well at slower speeds than the P-47D, and is a much lighter plane, so at that speed it climbs a lot better than the P-47D. So in a 1v1 combat, what happens? The PF-109F4 versus a P-47D should try to drag the combat to slow speeds near its own best speed, which is under the best climb speed of the heavier plane, so around 250 to 80 km per hour, to then use its much better climb rate and acceleration to fight in the vertical plane, using high yo-yos, loops, low yo-yos, whatever, but in the vertical, until he's won the upper hand in a close fight. This is very easy to understand, because if you are in a plane that doesn't accelerate very well and you are trying to follow a vertical turn contest, a vertical fighting, gravity is going to slow you down a lot, and you won't win that acceleration that speed very quickly. On the other hand, if you are in a plane that accelerates and climbs very well, and you keep the fight in the vertical at those very slow speeds, you are going to be winning all the time ground on the enemy plane. Basically, you are using energy into your advantage because you are at your best climb speed, while the other guy is not, and you're using that climb speed to fight in the vertical where the other guy can't follow you. Sooner or later, you'll be on the 6 on the enemy plane and you'll kill him. Easy. The P-47D should try to stay faster than his own best climb speeds at all times by a smart concatenation of zoom climbs and power dives, thus staying in zoom realm and out of sustained climb realm, and win that way enough energetic differential out of those moves to end up higher than the 109, and then boom and zoom it at will from that position. Actually, you can see this in the in another of my videos, which are linking right now again, which displays how do I energy fight in the Focus 190. The thing is, the P-47, what has to do is to stay way faster than his best climb speed, because then he's in realm of zooming and power diving, and he's in the realm where inertia is what's actually moving his plane more than his actual engine output. Meanwhile, the 109 is a much lighter plane and it's struggling to follow. It's very easy to understand, because in a lighter plane you don't keep your high speed as easy as in a heavier plane. So by staying fast, the P-47D is achieving two things. First of all, he's staying in the flight envelope that most favors himself. High speeds, inertia, zooms, power dives, all that stuff is where his plane is better than the 109. And the second thing he's achieving by staying fast is staying far away from the flight envelope where the 109 is much more superior, which are low speeds. It's pretty easy to understand, isn't it? Let's go on. The main point here is commanding the fight, being the one with the initiative, okay? The PF-109 can't force the P-47 to slow down. Simply can't. The P47D has that on his own hand. I mean, the P47 won't slow down unless his own pilot slows down the plane. Okay. Of course, that holds true unless he's caught low and slow to begin with. Then he has nothing to do. And that's why you never should go for ground targets in a P47D, no matter how many rockets or bombs you can load on it. Because to go for ground targets, you must be low. And I mean, to do well in a P47D in a very heavy plane, you need altitude. Because you need that altitude to trade it for speed, and then to trade that speed again for altitude. But you need that altitude to begin with. If you don't have it, you are lost. Okay? So it's very, very important. You need to stay fast in a heavy plane. If you don't have the altitude, you are sold. Sold. So climb the highest you can before engaging. Okay? Let's go on. The P47 pilot has the privilege to decide whether he stays fast or not. Hence, he is the one in the command of the fight, while the BF-109 can only wait for the P-47 pilot to fly his plane wrong or overcommitting a close bombing fight that ends up slowing the Thunderbolt enough for his superior acceleration climb rates to play an important part. This is all about initiative, who holds the ability to keep the fight in the most advantageous terms for himself, and in this case is the P-47D. All he has to do is to keep the fight fast, without slowing down, doing power dives, some climbs, maybe some high G maneuvers, but always, always, always keeping his speed up. Because while he's fast, the other guy, which is much lighter, is going to struggle to follow him. Okay? The only way a P-47 is going to lose a fight versus a 109 is by losing its speed. And it's in the hands of the P-47 guy to decide whether he stays fast or slow. And this holds true for all the comparisons. P-51 versus 109, Focus 190 versus Spitfire, P-40 versus I-16. The lighter plane can't command the fight. It only can fall prey on the enemy plane if the enemy plane commits a mistake and slows down. Alright? Corollary, or conclusion. Boom and zoomers always command the fight versus lighter planes. Always. All they have to do is to remain at high indicated air speeds, well over their own base climb speeds, and this is why air combat progressively moved towards boom and zoom style, and why light planes were soon surpassed by heavier fighters that, on paper, turned and climbed much worse than the lighter ones. This is exactly why air combat moved from biplanes to monoplanes, from monoplanes to jets. Because boom and zoom commands. Boom and zoom, the better boom and zoomer is the one in command of the fight. All he has to do is to keep his plane very, very quick and very, very fast. And using that speed to do zooms, power dives, zooms, a series of concatenated high-speed maneuvers that favor its ability to keep speed up easier, which favor its high inertia. And sooner or later, doing that, they will end up in a better energetic situation, and they will be able to do a vertical reversal. Again, the video I linked before of me in the Focus 190 doing boom and zoom is a good instance of that. And that's why heavier planes are going to always rule the fights as long as the pilots are smart. If they are not, if they slow down, if they engage in close turn fights, they are going to lose. And this is why planes with very nominal climb rate or acceleration can't ever match heavier planes, because lighter planes are naturally handicapped at high speeds. It's as simple as that. It's why, for instance, the Zero was totally busted out of the skies by the Americans. It's why the Spitfire lost totally its edge on, once heavier planes come around. It's why the Soviet fighters were never contender for the German ones, because they were much later. Uh, it's all basically down to the same rule. The heavier plane, if kept fast, is going to rule the fight. It's always that way. Of course, you have to be very careful, because it's not easy. It's not easy to do boom and zoom, because you have to be very careful with the G's you pull, the energy you waste. And also you have to keep in mind that even while you are better at high speeds, sooner or later you are going to... I mean, each maneuver you do costs you energy. And the guy behind has a better energy income, has a better power loading. So in the long run, energy states are going to be equalized, but doesn't matter. As long as the heavier plane stays fast, the lighter one won't be able to follow. So that's it. So yeah, guys, that's it. That's all for this lesson. I hope you learned something. I hope you understand something, something new, and that you better have you now have a better grasp and understanding of how zoom climbing works, why it's different from sustained climbing, and how to get the best out of your plane. Remember, lighter planes with good climb rates try to stay close to the best climb speeds. Heavier planes with poor sustained climb rates try to stay as fast as you can. That's a rule of thumb. Of course, then it's all down to experience and a little bit of understanding of air combat maneuvers, energy fighting, etc. But this is a good start, I think. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. As always, thank you very much for watching, and see you later.